far in the future where we're going to hear a story of a property where somebody has been injured or worse, killed because of some failure in safety. And I think, that's going to be more hurtful to the Airbnb type brand. And, the clever money would say, well, okay, we're creating these consumer groups to help them and to promote us as well. But we really need to get a grip of this health and safety issue. Now, if they did that, then I think that changes the game completely, because that then steals the march on tour operators. You can then see why consumers would be attracted to a company that's quite robust in the way that it approaches its relationship on health and safety with its renters, with its consumers. And I think that could actually steal the march. It could actually steal the clothes off some of the tour operators. There's perhaps a little bit of blue sky thinking, maybe on my part, but they are the future. They've had a phenomenal growth since they were set up in California, I think it was. If they are under political pressure, I think they probably, as a company, if I was part of Airbnb, I would be stepping back and I'd be looking at the features and the aspects that make up a holiday and where the risk lies, and then addressing that risk. But, we may well see other manifestations of Airbnb. I think there's a few of those types of companies rising from some Far Eastern countries that are trying to steal the march on the internet as well. And consumers have really got to be aware. They've really got to be aware of who they're contracting with. And I think most importantly of all, if anything goes wrong, you need to know, if you had to bring a case, where you'd have to bring that case. I saw one set of terms and conditions in which the travel company said that you have to bring your case in Delaware in the United States. Now, I know a little bit about small claims courts in the United States, but the average consumer won't.
So they do really need to read the small print before they hand their money over.
Yeah. Get to. It's like anything else, John, isn't it? If you're buying, whether you're going to a car showroom, well, it's a good example. You go to a car showroom, you form a relationship with the fellows or the women in the car showroom, and you get a feel for their ethic and ethos as a company. So you buy into the individuals and you buy into the company. So when you're buying things online, get a feel for the company. Get a feel, if you talk to somebody on the phone from that company, what they're like. And read those terms and conditions, because they're going to become so much more important in terms of resolving disputes in the future, more so, I think, than even now. And consumers need to really get under the detail. I know it's boring. They've been written by boring lawyers. But, they are important. And if you realize that the company you're contracting with isn't actually in the UK, you've got to ask yourself the question, am I happy with that? And if something goes wrong, am I up to it? Am I capable of dealing with the hassle of trying to resolve my holiday complaints with a company that isn't even in the UK? So, it's a question of just carefully managing how you enter into that relationship before you part with your money. It's investing no more than, say, 20 or 30 minutes of your time. But it's well worth it, and it will save an awful lot of pain in the end.
Checking it out before you check in on the John Guinn Travel Show on ukhealthradio.com. I think some of the problems about consumers not knowing their rights and looking for the cheapest holidays down to the travel industry anyway, because for years they've undersold what they actually do and provide. All they say is you can't buy cheaper. They don't go on about the protection. They don't go on about the knowledge and the terms and conditions and how they can help you if there's a problem. They just go on and on about being the cheapest. So if somebody sees a cheap price on the internet, they're going to go for it.
I think that's absolutely right. I think as consumers, It's this old saying, all that glitters is not necessarily gold. I've seen adverts, for a 2-week all-inclusive to Egypt for 200 quid. That has to be a joke. There's got to be some slippage in the quality of the product. And, maybe price is a factor, but you've got to understand what you're dealing with. But, John, you really raise a great point there about how the companies undersell themselves. You're absolutely right. They're only interested in the bottom line. They should be singing their praises, their own praises about how they manage health and safety, for example, because I think that's one of the big issues. If they have terms and conditions, and I've been saying this to travel companies and when I've met people at APTA and other professional bodies, if you're producing terms and conditions, why not take a leaf out of the insurance industry's book and produce a quick facts document that sets out in no-nonsense, plain English, what the terms and conditions are about? And, it gives the company the opportunity to make sure that the consumer understands fully the extent of their liability, that is the company's liability, but also the obligations of the consumer. And, I look at some of these terms and conditions in dismay. When they say small print, they really do mean small print, but it goes on for pages. Now, somebody like me, I understand it. I understand the structure and the form, and I know where to find things within terms and conditions. But for an ordinary consumer, they fall asleep looking at this kind of stuff. And I can say that. I'm a lawyer myself. So I can say, when you're creating contracts, when you're creating terms and conditions, if you're a consumer-fronting business, you can win the day if you spell it out how good you are to your consumers, be that in terms and conditions, health and safety, or indeed how you're going to service them in the event that they've got a complaint.
You mentioned the example of a cheap holiday in Egypt and that the standards should slip. Are people expecting too much for the money anyway? Is it getting that they expect more and more for less and less, or are the travel companies slipping on their standards as well?
I see there are some, I would say it's a small number of consumers who, for them, price is everything. And, whilst, if you say pay 200 quid for a holiday, you should expect a safe standard. It's as simple as that. But as for everything else, there is some mileage in the adage that you get what you pay for. But I don't think that ever should be at the expense of safety. But I think with consumers and pricing and stuff like that, people are looking for best value. They don't want a cheap value, but they certainly want the best value. Particularly the pressure upon families. I think you see the pressure point there with families, because holidays have become very much. It's almost like an all-inclusive holiday is almost like a major industrial unit, if you like, and it presents so many opportunities, whether it's in food or whether it's in the number of swimming pools or whether it's in the entertainment, whatever it is. And when I think consumers are looking for their holidays, particularly in these tight times, they're saying, well, look, if we pay this much money, we will get all of that. And that is in response to the promise that's made in the brochure. It is the companies who are making the promise and the consumer who's reacting to that promise, partly on the basis of the price. And I think, you're going to see probably a little bit more of that in the next 2 to 3 years, and probably slightly beyond, particularly during the Brexit years, because there is a real rise, again, of recognition in the travel industry that all-inclusive is king. And And I think, it's almost like there are all-inclusives and there are all-inclusives. And so people will start to shop around, I think, on the all-inclusive holidays and the facilities that are contained in the promise and within the promise of the price.
There'll be more from Frank next week when we'll be talking about the quality of the air in aircraft cabins and whether or not the air you're breathing when you're going away on holiday is good for you or not. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, ABTA is warning about travel scams as we hit the peak booking season. A third of the summer holidays will be booked between January and February. It's the time when there's lots of choice and lots of good deals, so that's why there's so many people book. According to a City of London police report released last year, fraud and scams for holidaymakers is costing them £11.5 million, and ABTA has a few things for you to look out for. So the first thing is to see whether the business you're booking the holiday with actually offers you financial protection. There are laws in place about certain holidays that you must have it, such as a package holiday, there must be financial protection for that. If it's a flight with a hotel or a hire car, there should be an ATOL with that too. So check if the company does have the right credentials. ABTA has reported over 100 companies in the last year which don't to the proper authorities. Scam websites and clone websites. So scam websites are companies that don't exist. Clone websites look identical to a legitimate company's website, but the web address is slightly different, so make sure you spell everything correctly. There's also false credentials. Companies on the websites advertise displaying logos they're not entitled to, such as ABTA membership and ATOL. But you can quickly check these by going to ABTA, Travel Association, Global Travel, and checking the membership number to see that it's still current and the details there match the details on the website. But what you should really look out for is paying by bank transfers, and you should always be suspicious when the only payment option is via a bank transfer. People always talk about this, but they never explain what a bank transfer is. And now Sally Francis, who's a senior writer at www.moneysavingexpert.com, is going to explain what a money transfer is and why you're at risk if you use it.
So a bank transfer it's a payment from your bank account to somebody else's, completely direct with no middleman involved.
When you're buying stuff online, you're advised to use a credit card, and I'm sure everybody's aware of Section 75. But when it comes to making a money transfer for a bank, people say don't do it, it's not protected. But nobody says why it's not protected. Why can you lose your money if you pay somebody in this way?
So it's basically not that much different to paying for cash for something. Let's say you've got a friend that's done something for you and you've agreed to pay them, so you hand over the money. It's no different to that. It's essentially you transferring money, but just doing it electronically. You authorise that payment, so you are physically going into your bank account or into your bank or into your online banking and saying, look, I authorise that payment to go across to somebody else. It's not usually a business. It can be, but most of the time it's kind of more smaller businesses, individuals. And it is, as I said, no different to giving them cash.
So in effect, it's just like handing money to a stranger down the pub.
Yeah, exactly. And you wouldn't expect, let's say that stranger turns out to just run out the pub with your cash. You wouldn't really expect someone to give you that money back. If
you've been a victim of fraud, or you know somebody who has, then the complaint should be registered with the police at www.actionfraud.police.uk. That website, along with Money Saving Expert, Frank's Holiday Travel Watch and the Bank of England Museum, can all be found at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. If you are looking for a holiday at this peak booking time, I hope you find the deal you're looking for without any problems. And I also hope you join me next time on the Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com, where each week I'm checking it out before you check in.